What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Parlay. This is my first solo YouTube show, and we are going to be breaking down everything of importance that happened at UFC 276. I'm going to jump straight into it. I'm going to start with the two retirements we had on the card. First, Jessica Eye retires after losing to Macy Barber. Macy Barber is a beast. She's younger. I have high hopes, and that is a fighter in the women's division that I'm going to be watching. She is strong. She was able to reverse position against Jessica Eye, get her on the cage. Super impressive by Barber. Her striking is getting better. She holds a lot of power, and she's really good in the clinch. Those short elbows, those short right hands, really good, really impressive. And then after beating Jessica Eye took the mic and ended up retiring from the sport of MMA. Jessica Eye, pretty good career. She was 15-11. However, she's been in there with some of the best women in that division. So hats off to Jessica Eye. Thank you for a great career and what you've done for women's MMA. And then the next retirement we had was Cowboy Cerrone. He retires after being the all-time leader in head kick knockouts, some of the most knockouts of all time. I think he ended his professional record with 38 wins. And if it wasn't 38, it was 36. So amazing career for Cowboy. He's literally an OG. He's one of the last ones we've got in the sport. So hats off to Cowboy, man. A great guy. I think he has a bright future. He said he wants to go and do movies and things of that such. I think he'll be great for that. He's going to spend some time with his kids. Can't fault a guy for that. He's given a lot of his time and a lot of his life to the UFC and to the sport of MMA. Couple more takeaways. Dricus du Plessis got the win over Brad Tavares. Brad Tavares had a super strong first round. And then, Dricus came on in the second and third, really got after it. And Brad just didn't have an answer for him. I think Dricus going forward, he does have a bright future. He's going to have to tighten a few things up. He's a strong kid. He hits hard, good ground game. So he has all the tools and he has all the capabilities of being a really good fighter in the UFC. He's just going to have to sharpen those tools up a little bit. He is 17-2. I mean, that's super hard to do in MMA. So impressive record. He's going to keep climbing the ranks. And we will be seeing a lot more of Dricus du Plessis for sure. And then we get the Ian Gary win over Gabe Green by decision. And this fight was a testimony to how tough Gabe Green is because Ian Gary hit him with some shots that most guys in this division are going to fall to. But Ian Gary moves to 10-0. He's the next Ireland fighter out of Ireland that people are going to have their eyes on. Ever since Conor McGregor, it's always been who's that next Irish fighter that the UFC is going to gravitate towards, who's going to go on these little runs and be super fun to watch. He's not quite as brash on the microphone. He doesn't say this outlandish stuff and get in his opponent's head. But Ian Gary definitely has the skill set that makes people turn the TV on and watch. And he's super, like I said, he's super fun to watch. He's super exciting on the feet. Great striking, and he's big. I mean, he's pretty big for the division. He's tall, he's long. You can tell he's strong, and you can tell he's focused. So Ian Gary, definitely a guy to keep your eye on going forward. Every time Ian Gary's fighting, I'm watching, for sure. And I think most of the MMA community can agree with that and stand by that when Ian Gary is on the TV, your eyes are tuned in. Again, Jim Miller beat Donald Cerrone by submission. Donald kind of slipped. Mayhem Miller jumped on top of him, got the submission. But a really interesting fight, and I was looking forward to this one going into the card. Jalen Turner and Brad Riddell. Brad Riddell had a ton of momentum. All of his teammates were on this card, or his bigger name teammates. Alexander Volkanovski, Israel Adesanya. They all trained at City Kickboxing. So he had a lot on his side as far as momentum, energy, the crowd behind him, that kind of thing. But Jalen Turner, man, 6'3" in the lightweight division. So at weigh-ins, he's 6'3", 155 pounds, tallest dude in the division, and he's super, super skilled. He's still young. He's still learning as well. So when he gets better, fights against guys like Brad Riddell, win or lose for him, is a super good learning experience. He moves to 13-5, and man, that guillotine, when he snatched that neck, it's just, he's so long and he's so strong. When he catches guys in these submissions, there's no real way out of it for his opponents. And his striking is good too. So Jalen Turner is one of these guys that all around is technically sound. Maybe not technically sound. He is, he can be a little wild. But like I said, he's tall, he's long, he's got the skills. And he's going to be a really, really tough out at lightweight for anybody who goes up against him. And that was our featured prelim, and we moved into Pedro Munoz and Sean O'Malley. There's a lot to say about this fight. I think everybody was looking forward to this fight. Maybe it was the number 1 or number 2 fight people were buying the pay-per-view for. Sean O'Malley, 15-1. He had that loss to Chito Vera. He's got a ton of hype, probably more hype behind him than anybody besides, Hamzat and guys like that. But Sean O'Malley, this is his first time fighting a ranked opponent inside the top 10. Pedro Munoz is 1-4 in his last 5 fights, but he's fighting killers in Jose Aldo, Aljamain Sterling, Dominic Cruz. So Pedro's fighting the elite of the bantamweight division. And Sean O'Malley was coming in wanting to make a statement, get that win over a top 10 guy, prove that he belongs there. And, it's a no contest by about 20 seconds. If that fight goes any longer, it goes to the judges' scorecard, and it gets interesting because a couple judges had Pedro Munoz winning that first round. Now, that first round, Pedro Munoz came out, and you could tell his game plan right away was to kick the ever-living hell out of Sean O'Malley's legs, and he did so. However, Sean O'Malley was checking a lot of them. I'm not sure the statistics. I've seen, stats on that are a little back and forth. O'Malley thinks he checked 90 to 95% of them. I don't know if it was that many, but he was checking a good amount of Pedro Munoz's kicks. But Sean O'Malley wasn't able to get much of his offense off. So, those leg kicks, you could tell he was real focused in on them, focused on checking them, and it didn't allow him to get his hands going. But on the other hand, Pedro Munoz, I don't know if he landed a single strike to the head all first round. O'Malley did hit him with an overhand right that really bothered Pedro's eye. And then, like I said, we get into the second, and I think Sean O'Malley was starting to get in that little flow state that he does, starting to look a little bit better on the feet, and then he gets the eye poke. It didn't look like, at first glance, the finger went straight into the eye. It almost seemed like it kind of glanced it. O'Malley's fingers were up. But again, I've seen a lot of people saying Pedro quit. Pedro was looking for a way out. But at the end of the day, Pedro has been in there with scarier guys than O'Malley. I'm not saying O'Malley is worse than the guys he's been in there with. But I mean, guys like Jose Aldo, who are established, badass bantamweights. Guys like Dominic Cruz, who have been in the conversation for best bantamweights of all time. So for him to want to quit against O'Malley and not against those guys, I just don't see it. I think the only person who knows how bad the eye poke was Pedro Munoz. And, if he says he couldn't see, he couldn't see. Not sure where either of these guys go from here. So it's not really a loss for Sean O'Malley. I mean, it's a no contest, but he doesn't lose any hype. His stock doesn't go down because of this fight. So he could either get this rematch with Pedro on a card, here in the next couple months, or what I personally would love to see would be him fight the winner of the Dominic Cruz and Chito Vera fight coming up. That would be what makes sense to me. But at the end of the day, you just don't know what the UFC is going to do. But I think he does one of those two things, rematch with Pedro or the winner of that fight. Then you had Bryan Barberena and Robbie Lawler. Robbie Lawler looked really good in the first round. Good head movement, a lot of slip and rips. Was doing good body work to Bryan Barberena. Bryan Barberena is a little bit unorthodox, and Robbie handled that really, really well in the first round. I thought he had him hurt a few times. He hit him with some big shots. That uppercut was there all night long. So good first round for Robbie Lawler. Then you get into the second. I don't know if Robbie was necessarily getting tired, but Bryan Barberena was just constant pressure. He wasn't throwing anything too hard. He was just peppering, just touching him over and over and over. And finally that right hand connected right to the chin, straight down the middle, and it wobbled Robbie. And that was the beginning of the end. Bryan Barberena capitalized, followed up with some great shots, ended up putting Robbie Lawler out for a second round TKO win for Bryan Barberena. And then we get Alex Pereira and Sean Strickland, a fight that a lot of people were looking forward to as well. It seemed like the Strickland-Pereira fight and the Sean O'Malley and Pedro fight were the two main events of the evening. And I don't even know if I want to say that because you got Volkanovski and Holloway on there as well, and obviously Izzy and Jared Cannonier. But this was a very hyped-up fight, a fight a lot of people had a lot of interest in. And I thought Sean Strickland would go in there and have a better showing. And what I think happened, obviously we know Alex Pereira is a great striker, a legend in kickboxing. He's knocked Israel Adesanya out before. So we knew he was a good striker going in. What I figured would happen is Sean Strickland would go in and try to clinch right away, try to grapple, wear him down. And what I think happened is Sean Strickland stood in front of him, wanted to feel his power, was trying to, feel him out a little bit, get his range down, time his shots a little better, and in the process took that left hand that anybody in the division drops to. A beautiful left hand, followed up by a nasty right hand that put the lights out. Alex Pereira gets the win by knockout against Sean Strickland in the very first round, and now this probably sets up a title fight with Israel Adesanya, a fight that will bring a lot of eyes because of their former meetings in kickboxing, because Alex has knocked Israel Adesanya out in kickboxing. So that sets up a major, major fight. So that was fun. That's fun to see. That's fun to anticipate. It's fun to look forward to. But you get into the co-main event, and you get Alexander Volkanovski and Max Holloway 3. Now, the first two meetings against these guys was super close. A lot of people thought Holloway maybe won the first or second fight. Could have gone either way, but they both went to Alexander Volkanovski, according to the judges. I knew this fight, I didn't know, but I figured this fight would go to a decision. If neither of them had knocked each other out in the first two fights, I didn't think it was going to happen in the third. But Alexander Volkanovski came into this fight on a whole nother level than we've seen before. I know he looked good against the Korean Zombie, but Korean Zombie is not Max Holloway. Volkanovski is the best 145er we've seen in a while, and there's been a lot of good 145ers. I mean, Max Holloway is on the pound-for-pound list, and Alexander Volkanovski went out there and 50-45'd him on a couple of judges' scorecards. That is insane. That's tough to do, but Volkanovski's so locked in. He makes so few mistakes that he is an absolute problem for that division. And it's kind of the question now, what does Volkanovski do next? What's he do next? So if I'm Volkanovski, you've already done everything you need to do at 145. Let's go chase that second belt at 155. Volkanovski used to weigh over 200 pounds, so he can go up to 155, and the power's still going to be there. It's not like he's going to lose a bunch of power moving up 10 pounds. The speed is going to be there, obviously. I mean, Volkanovski was faster than Max the other night. He was obviously stronger than Max, but the quickness of his striking has improved every time out, and that makes a dangerous, dangerous guy if you're a fighter like Alexander Volkanovski, who doesn't make mistakes, who can put hands to face, good wrestler, good grappling, good wrestling defense. So he's going to be a hard out for anybody at the 155 division as well. So if you're Alexander Volkanovski, you can wait and see what happens between Charles and Islam Makhachev. If that's the next fight, if it is the next fight, I think you sit back, you see who wins that one, and you go after that 155-pound belt and try to make your name as the champ. Again, just my thoughts on that. But we move into the main event, and you get Israel Adesanya and Jared Cannonier. I made a prediction on this fight, and I figured Izzy was probably going to win by decision, or he'd get a TKO later in the rounds if Jared Cannonier were to get tired. It went exactly how I figured this fight would go. Israel Adesanya kind of stays on the outside. He's going to just hit you 1-2. He doesn't make mistakes on the feet. Israel Adesanya is as good of a striker as we've seen in the UFC. And when he's the champ, he's not going to go out there and take a whole bunch of chances against a guy like Jared Cannonier, who's fought at heavyweight, who has knockouts on his resume. With that right hand, he can put people to sleep. So Izzy's not going to go out there and get in the phone booth and start trading with this guy. So you kind of had to expect it to not be a super exciting fight. I did enjoy the fight. I think those kind of fights make it drag out. It makes it seem like it's really long, and you're just like, okay, when's the fifth round going to get here? When's the decision coming? We know what's going to happen. Unless Jared Cannonier can pull a knockout out of his ass, it's Israel Adesanya by decision easily all day long, and you're just kind of waiting for it to get to the bell so you can hear Bruce Buffer call and still for Israel Adesanya. But now you get Alex Pereira, who's knocked him out before, coming up, and that has to be the next fight. I mean, they didn't put Pereira in there with Sean Strickland because they're going to give him a number one contenders match next. I mean, to go unranked, your third fight in the UFC, to fight Sean Strickland, who's at the top of the division, that was made so if he won, he could go on and fight Izzy. He got the knockout. He's going to fight Izzy. It's going to be big. It's going to be fun. Two of the best strikers in the UFC, maybe number one and number two, fighting each other in the middleweight for the championship belt. It's going to be super, super fun to see. Another UFC Fight Night card coming this Saturday, and I will have more content for that throughout the week. I will post here on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. So if you're new here, please subscribe and like this video. It is the Parlay. And if you want to go over to Instagram, type in the Parlay_media and head over to TikTok and type in the Parlay. You can find me there. I would appreciate a follow. I appreciate you guys liking this video and taking time out of your day to watch this. And as always, this video is brought to you by Thrive Fantasy. It's got all of your sports fantasy needs, and for right now, if you make a deposit of $10 or more, you will get a 100% deposit match bonus, and make sure to use the promo code, the parlay, and you will get some free contest entries. Again, this is my first one of these. I appreciate you guys watching. Stay tuned. I will be posting more of these after every single UFC card, so we have a lot to look forward to. And like I said, please subscribe. It would mean a whole lot. I'm trying to build this company, build this content, and you guys are helping me. And we will see you next time. Again, I appreciate every one of you, and we will see you later in the week.